Hi, I am Amanda Kramer, and I live in Colorado. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. And my disease affiliation, I am a carrier of Leishman. I did not know I was a carrier of Leishman until I had a son. Leishman is carried by females and only presents itself in um, 50% of boys, and the other 50% are genetically fine when the mother is the carrier. And We had no family history of any diseases in our family or anything. And so we At the age of about 5.5 months, our son was struggling to sit up independently. And one of our friends said, "Hey, I think you need to get him checked out." They had a son about the same age, and they're like, "He seems really floppy." So we took him to neurology and got in with neurology and started medications treating it. And it took about a year before we officially had a diagnosis of Leishman. Um, and that's pretty early for a diagnosis. So he was about a year and a half. Some people don't get diagnosed maybe 3 or 4 or later. One of our doctors didn't diagnose somebody until they were 14. There are some defining factors of Leishman. So it is actually a behavioral, cognitive, and physical. Sorry, behavioral, physical, and cognitive disease. The largest risk factor is kidney damage. So he has high uric acid. So we are on a medication to treat that. But also, his behaviors are challenging. He Our doctor was like, "Yeah, he most likely will not be the most popular kid in your class." Um, so um, he often he's so our son is 4 right now. He screams a ton. Doesn't necessarily communicate in a typical fashion. He has a talker that he uses to talk right now. A lot of kids with Leishman can communicate um, orally. So we're hoping for that someday. The other biggest factor for Leishman is um, self-injurious behavior. So some children will, about 40% have the self-injurious behavior. Some will bite their lips, bite their tongues, or bite their extremities, is the other piece of it as well. And our son is exhibiting those self-injurious behaviors as well. So as soon as they tested it, and told me that I was carrier of the disease, we they said I said, "Well, I would like to have another child," and they were like, "Here are your best places to go for in vitro fertilization." So we took some time and pursue. I think we took about like 2 or 3 months because I'm an older woman. And so I needed to move along in the process. So we started meeting with CCRM. I couldn't tell you what CCRM stands for right now. And they were highly recommended by our doctors, as they have the ability to do genetic testing on an embryo. Not all IVF clinics will do genetic testing on an embryo, and so they were able to test every embryo that we had specifically to see if it was a carrier of Leishman. Our second child is a daughter, and we knew it was a daughter, and we knew that she was not a carrier. We did. It was our second implant. Our first implant did not work, and we knew that within like a month. And then we actually had two other embryos that we have just actually discarded because they were both carriers. And we knew that we did not want to have any more kids or have the capacity and time and management to have any other kids. I wish that it was interesting when after we found out the diagnosis, since we live in Colorado, currently now, Colorado is required to cover parts of in vitro fertilization of some sort. I don't know the specific details, but and we knew that was in the pipeline when we were going through the process, but we couldn't wait. Um, so I called my insurance, who we still have as our insurance carrier, and I said to them, I said, either you can pay $40,000 to cover this IVF treatment and prevent another child from having this terrible disease, or you can have a lifelong need of millions of dollars of medical coverage, which this child is going to have. Um, if we do not prevent another diagnosis of flesh in a hand. And they're like, yeah, we don't cover IVF. And I like, to me, that seems ridiculous in the like anybody would want to prevent millions of dollars of spending if they could just spend $40,000. Like that seems backwards. So I think that would be something that insurance would want to like think about covering if they don't want to cover IVF for whatever reasons, but to prevent millions of dollars worth of spending in the future just seems logical to me. Well, it's interesting. So in Fort Collins, where we live, there is this magical place called Respite Care. And they are open Monday through Sunday, like 7 to 7. They do overnights on the weekends. And I worked in um, before and after school care. And my coworker and I went and toured it because it's kind of a similar dynamic, and we were partnering with them on some projects. And so I went over and toured it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like that has to be so challenging, and like, um, and now my son uses respite care at least 3 times a week, and we use that facility, and I never really like blamed anyone, but I have to remind myself every day that I did nothing wrong, that I did everything that I was supposed to do. And this is just the cards that I was handed. And so I just have to remind myself, and I have to think about like, I had this ideal picture of what my family was going to be like, and knowing that it was going to be this perfect like image of everything, um, and knowing that it might not be that perfect image, but it's still perfect in its own way. So just reminding myself of that and thinking about, and every child is a miracle in some sort of way. And whatever that blessing is, accept it and continue to grow from that.